All governments that used Islam as a formula for their constitution, in other words, violent Sharia law, all of them fail. Islam is not a constitution to govern, it's a constitution to guide. And even that can be questioned, because you cannot impose your faith on anyone, whether you have a government or not. I believe that if we have a cancer within the country, this cancer needs to be eradicated as well. Therefore, the Islamization of certain Islamic centers within America also needs to be dealt with.
Hi guys, this is Sahar TV, and in today's video we're seeing Imam Tawhidi, an Imam who wants to reform Islam. Let's watch.
So, we secular Muslims claim that Islam in its origin is a progressive religion. On the other hand, in 21st century, we see quite opposite to it, by the actions of our fellow Muslim beings. And I'm sure you are addressing this issue many times, you have addressed this issue. But how would you like to enlighten our viewers on this very sensitive issues, that on one hand we claim our progressiveness, but on the other hand, we are quite opposite to it, to make it more clear?
Islam being a religion from God, we claim that Islam is a religion from God. It's impossible as believers in God to believe that any religion coming from God is a violent religion against humanity, and it's a belief system or an ideology that wants to go around and butcher people. The fact that we believe that Islam came from God clearly shows that Islam, up until this very sentence of mine, is a religion of peace. So any religion, Christianity, Judaism, any religion claiming to have a link with God has to be a religion of peace, because God does not butcher his creations. Later on, when this religion of peace falls into the hands of human beings, whether or not it's really a religion of peace now or it continues to be a religion of peace is a whole different discussion. Religion coming from God to mankind, this very transition is a transition of peace. What humans choose to do with this belief system and ideology is a whole different story. We find the Umayyads changed succession into kingship, from caliphs to kings. They use the same Quran. Shia Islam uses the same Quran. Sunni Islam uses the same Quran. Most of the Islamic faith depend only on the Quran, regardless of the hadith, when living their lives. Many, like the Akhbaris, live based on hadith more than the Quran. All of the 70 plus Islamic denominations believe in the Quran and they live by the Quran. Yet all of them are killing each other because of evidence from the Quran. This shows you that we are dealing with this level of intellect, that a human being is trying to interpret the words of God. And when not qualified, we are faced with a very dangerous situation where now faiths and ideologies and schools of thoughts are being introduced to this whole, let's call it the table of discussion when it comes to theology and doctrine. And none of them are really qualified. You'll find one of them is blind, or one of them came 300 years after the Prophet Muhammad, one of them doesn't speak Arabic, one of them doesn't even believe in the Prophet as an infallible being that is worthy of worship, one of them believes the Prophet urinates in the street. How do these people become qualified to form faiths? Therefore, if we believe God is peace, then everything coming from God has to be peaceful. If we see that there's a religion that claims a link with God and is a violent religion, the problem is with the people. The problem is with the adherents of that faith. Yes, we do have terrorist teachings in our books. These terrorist teachings can be ignored without any problem. So, for example, if I claim God is one, and I claim there is heaven and hell, and there is a hereafter, what other human beings want to believe when it comes to stoning and killing, these matters can be ignored, and the main core principle of the faith and the religion will not shake. They will not be affected.
So what I'm getting, that Islam is one thing which is faith, and political Islam is another thing.
Exactly.
Political Islam is the reason for killing each others. So when we denounce political Islam as Muslims, when we challenge political Islam and say that this is not acceptable in our faith, that part, all Islamic organizations and Muslim leadership, they go against us and they say, oh, you are challenging Islam. But on the other hand, we are challenging political Islam. So how to deal that mindset?
The problem with the Islamic institution, the main governing bodies of Islamic schools of thought, is that they have made a big mistake when understanding the religion of Islam. And I say this with full audacity. Islam as a religion, like Christianity, like Judaism, all religions come with one mission, and that is to guide the human being, not to rule over the human being. Political Islam comes from the problem that some scholars in Islam, and they're the majority, believe that Islam can be used as a tool to govern human beings. And this is the problem. Islam is not a constitution that one can use in a government. And this is why all Islamic governments are failing governments with the worst economy, the highest statistics in divorce, the people are upset, prisons are full, people are fleeing the country, flooding the West. Why? Because all Islamic governments are a fail. I don't want to speak about other religions, other theocracies, but I speak about my religion. All governments that used Islam as a formula for their constitution, in other words, violent Sharia law, all of them fail. No one can now give me one good, successful Muslim government. All of them have problems that can be avoided. Basic problems, for example, bread and so on, 100 times the value goes up in a matter of 1 year. People are uprising, they're protesting. Why? Because Islam is not a constitution to govern, it's a constitution to guide. And even that can be questioned, because you cannot impose your faith on anyone, whether you have a government or not.
Wow, do you understand the risks this guy will be facing from what he just said? In Islam, it is believed that you can't separate the belief, the religion, and the state. Mosque and state go hand in hand. So by him saying that Islam cannot govern people, cannot be used in a government, that contradicts what most Muslims believe. And that is amazing that he says that. And I'm glad there's people, brave people like Imam Tawhidi, who speak their minds and put themselves at risk, just so you can be aware.
So let me be devil's advocate for my own faith. In today's complex world, people see Islam is an elephant in the room. And they see kind of a hindrance in modernization within Muslims due to our faith, because of the actions people are carrying in the name of Islam or whatever reasons. How to modernize Islam or Muslims? Is it one thing, modernizing Islam or Muslim, or two different things? Please help us to understand the phenomena.
These two terminologies, modernizing Islam and political Islam, they are not one terminology, both of them each. They're not terminologies that apply in one way upon all Muslims. So for example, political Islam, in Saudi Arabia it's different. In Iran it's different. Exported from Saudi Arabia, exported from Iran in different ways. Political Islam, the concept that religion uses a form of politics or mixes with politics in order to impose its faith through political means, is one matter. And it can also be linked with Islamism, although the definition of political Islam is much broader than this. But just to touch upon it. And modernizing Islam in a terminology is very different. Modernizing Islam in Saudi Arabia, as we see in recent times, is one thing. Modernizing Islam in Oman and Dubai is another thing. You find both countries now, Saudi Arabia claims to be a modern society, imprisoning the radical clerics, closing down fundamental institutions. But the UAE is also moderate. This is moderate, that is moderate. But when you compare UAE with Saudi Arabia, no matter how reformed Saudi Arabia is, there's still a problem. So Islam being a modern religion in itself cannot apply to all Muslims at once. Because obviously the means to this modernization differ. And if the means differ, the results will definitely differ.
So as we are talking about political Islam,
if you're asking me why Dubai reforms and modernizes and Saudi Arabia, why they do it because they know that in order to prosper and link to the Western world, they must do it. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't Muslims who want to reform Islam and make sure that it aligns with the West. Of course there are. And Imam Tawhidi is one of them. But they claim that these people don't want Sharia to be spread all over the world, to be ruled under the wing of Islam. I need to see more people saying that, because so far from the people I've seen, there's very few people that say this out loud.
So we cannot disassociate ourselves from world politics. Recently, we have seen a president in the United States, the most important country for the rest of the world, Mr. Donald Trump, who seems tough with Islamist ideology. Would that stance help to curb extremism within Muslim communities?
Whatever happens in Washington, D.C. from the American administration influences the rest of the world. And this is why the rest of the world always has something to say when it comes to decisions made in Canada, because it affects them directly. It affects their economy, it affects international security, and so on. President Donald Trump and his fight against Islamism should not be limited to America's benefits. So if you're going to wage a war against Islamism, wage a war on Islamism in all aspects. In all aspects. I can't speak for the foreign ministry of America, because clearly they have had issues with Syria, with Iran, and so on. Therefore, there are efforts against Islamism, and there are efforts against Islamic terrorism, and there are efforts against the violent Islamic regimes around the world. However, within America, we also need to make sure that we tackle the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamization of certain areas, the hundreds of mosques that are being built without any monitoring.
The Islamic Brotherhood is an organization trying to spread Sharia worldwide and make sure that the world becomes Muslim.
The unvetted immigration system. So if we are going to tackle Islamism, it's not limited to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not the savior. He's here for a few years and he will leave, and then another one will come after him. They could undo everything this current president has done.
Yeah.
Our war against radical Islam isn't limited nor dependent upon the president of the United States, whoever he may be. The main issue is that whoever comes and sits on the chair in Washington, D.C. needs to understand that the war against Islamism isn't a war of 4 years or 8 years. It is a war of ideology. Therefore, the sanctions that need to be placed upon these Islamic regimes that are sending their missionaries around the world, spreading radical Islam, the sanctions need to be realistic. And they can't be, you give me money, I will let you do whatever you want to do. I support a strong America. I support strong American borders. But at the same time, I believe that if we have a cancer within the country, this cancer needs to be eradicated as well. Therefore, the Islamization of certain Islamic centers within America also needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
So yes, I support the current efforts of the current American administration. However, I feel that the beginning was very serious. Now things have cooled down a bit. So I'd like to see them take even further action against American citizens who are radical Muslims.
Wow, listen, this guy is amazing, and I'll include the full video in the link in the description. By the way, I tried getting to Imam Mohammad Tawhidi to an interview. He said yes, but I'm still trying to finalize things with him and make sure that we can get it done, because I think he's incredible, and people like him should be heard more. Wow, the bravery of saying your mind and what you believe in, especially about your own religion, and when you have so much influence, when you're an imam, when you're a Muslim scholar, I can't even imagine what it's like. And I agree, we need to deal with the cancer in our society, which is Islamism. And we need to get rid of the tumor. And I'm talking about jihadis who live in the US and in the West, who burn the flags of the countries they live in, who call for the destructions of the countries they live in. Honestly, they don't have a place in the West, because the more of them who come to that state, the less freedom you have. If you'd like to watch more of my stuff, please check out my channel down below. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that notification button so you can be notified every time I upload new content. If you'd like to support me and the channel financially, you can do that using Buy Me Coffee or Patreon down in the links below. Also, we now have a Discord that you can join down in the link below. And now you can become a YouTube member and enjoy specific YouTube perks. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.